This is Bill Ryan from Project Camelot and Project Avalon, and the date is the 16th of February 2010, and this is a bit of an unusual video presentation here because I'm taking the step of making a video as an interpretation and as a commentary on an audio interview which we did with an important witness who came and reported his story to Project Camelot a little while ago, about a couple of weeks ago. And as with many of our witnesses, this person wanted to remain anonymous, but he has agreed that we transcribe the audio, and so we've got this as a transcript. This is a British person, and he worked in the British military for a number of years. And after he retired from the military, he worked in the City of London in a fairly senior position, in a respected position in the City of London. And for those people watching this video who don't know about the City of London, the City of London is it's like an enclave. It's like a financial enclave in the heart of London itself. And then in the June 2005, he attended another meeting that he thought was going to be a routine meeting, but actually this was something rather unusual, and he realized it was unusual as soon as he arrived. The people there were Masons. There were senior Masons. They were about 25 or 30 people there, including senior politicians who most people in the UK would recognize by name. I do not know who they were. He didn't name them, and I didn't ask them, but he said these are well-known names. The chief of police was there, representatives from the church, representatives from the military, 25 or 30 people. What they were talking about was a plan that had clearly been made a long time ago, and what they were discussing was the implementation of this plan. They were discussing how things were going, whether they were on track or not. Even back in June 2005, they were apparently concerned that what it was that was planned on some kind of a timeline wasn't rolling out according to schedule, and this was an issue for them. They were talking about China and how powerful China was getting, both militarily and financially, very quickly, and that the Japanese weren't doing what they were supposed to do, which was to interfere in some way with the Chinese financial system. They weren't doing that, and this was another problem because China was getting too strong too quickly. Other things that were discussed were, for example, the coming financial crash, the centralization of resources, everything that we saw starting to happen in October 2008. They were planning that and referring to it in their meeting in June 2005. It starts with Israel attacking Iran. Now, this hasn't happened yet. There have been a number of indications that there are forces which are trying to push this into happening. You've only got to follow the news for the last 2 years to realize that the public is being prepared for a justification for this kind of thing. Iran is being set up as being the bad guys that deserve something to happen to them, and so on and so forth. Now, that's going to be the start of what is like the opening gambit in a big chess game. The plan is for either Iran or for China to retaliate after Iran is struck with a nuclear weapon. At that point, there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, followed by a ceasefire. He heard this being planned in this meeting. This is being choreographed. It's like the script for a movie. This is exactly what's intended to happen. We've had a lot of information about this from a number of good researchers from many countries who are reporting this on the internet, that things are being set up in many of the Western countries for there to be heavy controls over populations, martial law, increased powers on security forces who are not just the army or the police. And then the next thing that happens in this chess game that's being played is that biological weapons are released on China. He heard this being discussed in this meeting. They will release a flu-like virus that will be genetically targeted against the Chinese population. It's racially targeted against the Chinese people. It's designed to spread like wildfire and to knock out a large number of the Chinese people. And these people in this meeting were laughing about this. They said, China will catch a cold. Those were their words. China will catch a cold. And after that, then what effectively will be a kind of plague will actually spread right across the world to the West as well. Our source was not clear whether this was a Chinese retaliation or whether the thing would just spread out of control in the way that it would be very understandable if it did, whether it's racially targeted or not. These things actually mutate. So now you've got a situation where there's been a limited nuclear war in the Middle East. There's a pandemic that really is sweeping across the world and really is killing people very visibly. And you've got this totalitarian military lockdown in all the governments in the Western worlds because everyone's going to be in panic about all of this. And then, he said, then the real war starts. Something that would be justifiably called the Third World War with a much more major nuclear exchange. When he was explaining this, then he said that they have a name for this plan. This project has got a name. And I said, well, what is this name? He said, it is called the Anglo-Saxon Mission. So the sequence is as follows. The plan sequence is as follows. Israel attacks Iran, then there's a ceasefire, then during which time there is heavy governmental military controls over populations in all Western countries. Then China is attacked by a biological weapon. It's a flu-like disease that spreads like wildfire. This goes all over the world, and then they have a major Third World War. And then, by this time, 50% of the population will be destroyed. And not only because of the war or the plague, but because, as many of you watching this will understand, the infrastructure goes down in situations like this. There's no food in the supermarkets, there's no gas in the pumps, the telecommunication goes down, there may not even be water coming out of the taps. People are kind of thrown back into a Victorian era. At this point, I asked him, is this just about population reduction? What is this about? Why are they doing this? He said, absolutely, it's about population reduction. So I said, well, in this meeting, did they mention any figures? And he said, yes, they did, 50%. Half the world's population. This is planned as per the Georgia Guidestones. For those of you who don't know what the Georgia Guidestones are, it's a stone monument in Georgia in America that was erected anonymously a number of years ago. It's in 8 languages, and it's like an Illuminati manifesto for a new world. One of the key parts of this manifesto for this new world is that there should be a population of 500 million people. Now, 500 million people is an enormous reduction from the nearly 7 billion that we've got at the moment. That's pretty much 95% of people who would no longer be on this planet. He doesn't know this for sure because these events aren't calendar driven, they're actually event sequence driven. In other words, this has got to happen before that happens, and then after that the next thing can happen, then after that the next thing can happen. So a whole lot of things have got to be in place before all the dominoes fall over, so to speak. He says that he's as sure as he can be that the people who are calling the shots in the world. You can call them the Illuminati, the controllers, the cabal, whatever name you have for them. They believe that there is going to be what he called a geophysical event, a major geophysical event. He says that the best information that he's got is that the insiders believe that this is going to happen, or they are concerned that this is going to happen. Consider this. He said, if there's going to be a major geophysical event, something like a pole shift, maybe it's Planet X, maybe it's some kind of energetic phenomenon that the solar system is going to be moving into, that's going to somehow destabilize the Earth or the Earth's crust in some way. We don't know. But if there were to be a major emergency like that, something that would actually make a war look very inconsequential, the thing that will help the human race to survive it, or will help parts of the human race to survive it, is if there is already emergency preparedness in place before it happens. Our source suggests that the reason for this whole Third World War scenario is that then the Western governments, with the Chinese out of the way, will be in a state of such totalitarian control of their own population that they will be best equipped to recover and rebuild the new world after a cataclysm. And he thinks that this is what's happening. And I have to tell you that this terrible logic makes sense to me, that they would think that way. Why would they do this? You know, war against China? Why? Third World War? Why? And suddenly, a lot of these things start to make a little bit more sense. It's possible, for example, that when we heard from Jordan Maxwell in our interview with him, which we did at the end of last year, 2009, he described to us how he had researched a number of repeating symbols and images that had been used ever since the time of Hitler, and even long before that, about the dawn of a new day. There's something very important in Masonic and Illuminati thinking about the dawn of a new day. And here we have possibly the reason for their belief that if you think about the possibility of a cataclysm, if they think this is really going to happen, the 2012 movie that many of you will have seen, after all of the flood and all of the earthquakes and tsunamis, then you've got these big ships sailing across a calm sea with the sun streaming through the clouds, and you've got the dawn of a new day, and the implication in that movie is that now those people will be able to rebuild the new earth because those are the survivors. It's the modern day Noah's Ark. It's possible that the dawn of the new day, that it refers to that. And it even occurred to me, and I'd be interested for other researchers to offer their views on this, that the very term the New World Order that we first started to hear about 20 years ago, actually longer ago than that, but the New World might be the post-cataclysmic world. The New World, it might be the order for the New World after the cataclysm. They may be planning who will inherit the New World. It may be nothing less than this.